The cold emptiness of space stretched forever. Stars blinked like tiny fires in the distance, near the edge of human space. A large alien fleet hovered in silence. This fleet belonged to the Zorath Empire, one of the largest alien powers in the galaxy. Their ships were sharp, dark, and dangerous looking. On the bridge of the flagship ISS Vengeance, Admiral Vecna stood with his arms crossed. His red eyes glowed under the dim lights of the control room. Around him, officers worked nervously at their stations. But Vecna, he laughed. Primitive. Humans, he said, smiling, weak, afraid, hiding behind old warning satellites. His second-in-command, Captain Relic, stepped forward, looking worried. Sir, Relic said carefully, records say, every alien fleet that crossed this border disappeared. Vecna's smile faded for a second. Then he growled, superstitions, old stories to scare cowards. The humans, they're a small species on one small planet. They bluff. The crew stayed silent. Everyone had heard the rumors, missing fleets, garbled distress signals, sudden deaths, and that old human warning that repeated on every open channel near the border, stay out. But Vecna was not afraid. Prepare to cross the border, he ordered. Engines across the fleet powered up. The Zorath fleet moved forward, thousands of kilometers away. Deep inside Earth Defense Command, an alarm rang. A young communication officer turned in his chair. Ma'am, unauthorized fleet crossing the line. Admiral Sarah Blake, sitting in her command chair, looked up sharply. How many ships? Over 20 warships, Zorath signatures. Entering Sector Z13, Blake's eyes narrowed. Confirmed sensor accuracy. Confirmed, ma'am. They're fully inside human space now. Blake stood up, her voice became cold and direct. Wake the Void Hunters, she said. Her officers stared at her, but none dared question. Back near the border, the Zorath fleet pushed deeper. Suddenly, strange things began happening. Admiral, our long-range sensors, they're going dark. A sensor officer shouted. What do you mean dark? Vecna barked. No data, no readings. Something is jamming us, Vecna growled. Switch to backup frequencies, but backup sensors also failed. Then, one of the lead scout ships started spinning out of control. Its engines failed. Its lights went out. It drifted, powerless. Admiral, Captain Relic shouted, we're losing ships. Before Vecna could react, a second ship lost power, then a third. Within minutes, panic started spreading through the fleet. Emergency jump back to base, Relic yelled. But before any ship could jump, something appeared on the main screen. A shadow, a massive silent shadow, no engine, heat, no radar signature, no warning. The Zorath ships opened fire. Missiles, plasma cannons, railguns, everything fired at the shadow. The projectiles passed right through, as if the shadow wasn't even there. Then, the shadow disappeared, only to reappear behind the fleet. In seconds, 2 Zorath cruisers exploded. No alarms, no escape pods launched. Just gone. On the bridge of the ISS Vengeance, panic filled the air. Admiral, they're picking us off, one by one. Who is doing this? Vecna roared. Suddenly, all their screens turned to static. Communications, dead. Navigation, dead. Weapons, offline. And then, through the static, a human voice came through. Cold, emotionless. We warned you. Vecna froze before he could speak. More human ships decloaked, black holes, no lights, no insignias, just cold, silent death. The human ships opened fire. Their weapons tore through Zorath shields like paper. Missiles with advanced tracking found targets instantly. Laser beams cut through holes. One after another, Zorath ships exploded. Within minutes, only the ISS Vengeance remained. Admiral Vecna stood alone on his shaking bridge. On every screen, one final human message appeared. You crossed the line. Now pay the price. Vecna grabbed the edge of his console. Send a distress signal, he screamed. But it was too late. His ship shook violently. Alarms blaring. Systems failing. The final explosion consumed him. And the last Zorath warship. On Earth, Admiral Blake watched the battlefield in silence. Her officers stood behind her, quiet, respectful. Blake gave her final order. Clean up the mess, she said softly. No survivors. No witnesses. The Void Hunters moved in, fast, efficient, silent. Another alien fleet, erased. Another chapter, added to the legend, across the galaxy. The dark reputation of human space grew stronger, and the warning remained. Stay out. End of part 1. If you want me to write the next one, just say. The cold black of space remained silent after the destruction. No stars blinked near the human border, only debris. Shattered pieces of what once was the mighty Zorath fleet. But far away, deep inside the Zorith Empire, alarms began to ring. A distress signal, short, broken, had managed to escape before the final ship vanished. Inside the Zorith High Command Center, Supreme Warlord Krelix stood staring at the message. His long claws tapped the side of the command table. "Play it again," he growled. The screen flickered. Static filled the air. Then came the short, terrifying audio, screams, explosions. Then the same human voice. "We warned you." The audio ended with static. Krelix's eyes narrowed. "Where is Admiral Vecna?" he asked. His officers stood frozen. "Gone, my lord. The entire fleet, gone." Krelix's face twisted with anger. "Send the second fleet. Double size. Full armament. Bring me answers," he roared. His war council hesitated. One brave officer spoke. "My lord, perhaps we should wait. The humans, their technology, we don't fully understand." Krelix turned slowly toward him, with one swipe of his claw. The officer fell. Deadeye said, "Send the fleet." Within hours, Zorath's second fleet, a force of over 40 warships, prepared for departure. Massive battleships, cruisers, and fighter carriers filled space near the homeworld. The new fleet admiral, Admiral Tyrik, stood on the bridge of his ship, the ISS Juggernaut, set course for human space. "Full speed," Tyrik ordered. The fleet engines roared to life. The stars shifted, and they jumped toward the forbidden border. Meanwhile, back near Earth, Admiral Sarah Blake sat at her desk. The report from the Void Hunters was short and brutal. Target fleet eliminated. 0 survivors. Border secured. Blake looked over to her intelligence officer. "Any signs of Zorith response?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "Second fleet preparing for deployment. Twice the size of the first." Blake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Good," she said. "Let them come." Her eyes narrowed as she tapped a button on her console. "Activate Phase 2 of the border defense net," she ordered. Several hours later, the Zorath Second Fleet arrived near the coordinates where the First Fleet vanished. Admiral Tyrik stood tall on his bridge. "Scans?" he asked. His officers checked. "Wreckage field detected. Multiple destroyed Zorith ship signatures." Tyrik frowned. "No human ships, none visible," Tyrik grunted. "Begin search and recovery. I want answers." Small scout ships deployed. They floated through the debris, scanning. Suddenly, strange interference hit their systems. One scout ship's lights flickered, then died. Another scout reported seeing shapes moving in the debris. The crew laughed nervously. "Just sensor ghosts," one pilot said. But then, one of the recovery teams sent a live video feed. The screen showed one of the missing Zoroth cruisers. Its hull was split open, floating in space. Bodies drifted inside, frozen eyes wide open, faces twisted in terror. One Marine whispered over the feed, "They weren't killed by weapons, they look like they died." Screaming, back on the ISS Juggernaut, Admiral Tyrik stared at the footage. Suddenly, more sensor alarms blared. "Unknown signals detected," shouted a sensor officer. "From where?" Tyrik demanded. The officer's face went pale. "Everywhere, sir. Signals are coming from inside the wreckage and under the debris field." Before Tyrik could react, the lights on the Juggernaut's bridge flickered. Communications dropped, and then every screen went dark. For 3 long seconds, silence. Then, on every screen, a human face appeared. A human soldier, wearing black armor, no helmet, cold, dead eyes staring directly into the camera. He spoke 2 words. Too late. At that exact moment, the human fleet decloaked. Hundreds of black ships surrounded the Zorith Second Fleet. Energy weapons, missiles, kinetic rounds, everything, fired at once. The first wave of Zorath ships exploded instantly. Panic filled the alien formation. Ships tried to turn, to escape, but the human jamming field shut down their engines. Some ships tried to surrender. The Void Hunters boarded them. Anyway, no mercy. No survivors. The battle was over in minutes. Inside the wreckage, Zorath soldiers recorded their last messages. One engineer, bleeding and trapped, whispered into his data recorder, "They don't take prisoners. They don't talk. They just kill. Like machines. Like death itself." His recording ended with static. Far away, back on Earth, Admiral Blake watched the live feed of the destruction. Her officers looked nervous. One lieutenant asked softly, "Ma'am, shouldn't we send a peace message? Offer surrender options. Let them leave?" Blake turned her head slowly. Her cold stare silenced the room. "We gave them their warning," she said. "They chose war." She stood, hands behind her back. "Prepare Phase 3, she ordered. The officer swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." The next day, across the galaxy, the Zorath Empire received hundreds of small data packets. Each one contained the same thing: a short video, a field of wreckage, human ships floating like predators over dead Zorath vessels. And a single line of text: stay out. The galactic community watched in fear. Alien governments began holding emergency meetings. Whispers started spreading across star systems. Humans, they are worse than we imagined. They are not defending, they are hunting. And still, Earth remained silent. No explanations. No explanations, no apologies, only cold, brutal action. And deep in the void, more human ships waited, cloaked, listening, ready, because this was human space, and no one crossed the line and survived. The remains of the Zoroth Second Fleet drifted in space like broken toys. No rescue ships. No survivors, only twisted metal, frozen bodies, and silence. But deep inside Zorath Empire space, at their military capital Zorak Prime, panic was spreading. The High War Council gathered for an emergency meeting. Holographic displays showed the destroyed fleets. Videos of human ships, black, fast, unstoppable, played again and again. One counselor shouted, "This is madness. 2 fleets destroyed. We underestimated them." Another pounded the table. "It's not possible. They shouldn't have this kind of power." The Supreme Warlord Krelix stood at the head of the chamber, his voice cut through the noise. "Enough," he roared. The room fell silent. "We are the Zorath Empire," Krelix growled. "We will not kneel to primitives." He turned to his generals. "Deploy the Third Armada, 200 ships, full planetary assault capability. Crush them, bring me Earth." His generals nodded quickly, but deep inside, even they felt fear. Meanwhile, far away in deep space, hidden behind asteroid fields, the Void Hunters prepared. Inside, a stealth cruiser called the Phantom Edge, Commander Lena Frost stood with her elite squad. Her face was hard, her black armor reflected no light, her voice was low but clear. "New targets. Zoroth reinforcement ships, heading toward human space. We intercept, we erase." Same as before, her squad nodded. These were not normal soldiers. Void Hunters were the best of the best. No mercy, no retreat, no prisoners. Hours later, the Zorath reinforcement ships crossed the halfway point. Inside one of the Zorath destroyers, Captain Velkar sat nervously. "Keep all sensors active," he ordered. "I want no surprises." Suddenly, all the ship's lights flickered. Velkar stood up. "Report," before his crew could answer. The ship's gravity failed. Officers floated into the air. Then emergency lights came on. Blood-red. A cold voice echoed through their internal speakers. "We're already here." A sudden explosion tore open the side of the ship. Void Hunters stormed in. Black armored humans. Silent, fast, deadly, plasma rifles, close combat blades. Zero hesitation. Zoroth soldiers screamed, fired their weapons wildly. But the humans were too fast. Room by room, hallway by hallway, the ship was cleared. Captain Vel grabbed a sidearm, trying to escape through maintenance tunnels. But as he opened a hatch, Commander Lena Frost stood waiting on the other side. Before Velkar could lift his weapon, she fired. One clean shot to the head. He dropped instantly. Frost spoke into her. "Come." Ship secured. No survivors. Her team moved on to the next target in less than 2 hours. 7 Zoroth reinforcement ships were gone. Their destruction was clean, quiet, and absolute. The wreckage drifted, adding to the growing graveyard near the border, on Earth. Admiral Blake received the report. Her aide whispered, "Ma'am, the Third Armada is still coming. Much bigger force this time." Blake didn't look up from her console. She tapped a few commands, pulling up secret files. "Then it's time," she said. "Time for what, ma'am?" the aide asked. Blake smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "Activate the Spectre fleet." The aide froze. "Ma'am, that's protocol level black." Blake stood. "I know exactly what it is," she said. Her voice went cold and sharp. "We gave them warnings. We gave them mercy. Now we show them what true fear feels like." Far across the stars, the Zoroth Third Armada continued its slow march toward Earth. Over 200 warships, thousands of soldiers, planetary assault divisions ready. They believed they were unstoppable, but deep in the void, the silent hunters prepared. More Void Hunter squads. The Spectre fleet, long hidden, now moving. Black ships with no transponders, no heat signatures, no mercy, no escape. The Zoroth had crossed the line, and this time humanity was hunting. The Zoroth Third Armada moved like a giant metal wave through space. Over 200 warships, destroyers, battleships, carriers, and supply cruisers all marching toward Human space. On board the Zorath flagship, ISS Dominion, Admiral Terekver stood tall. His body was covered in battle scars from decades of war, but this was different. Every report from the previous fleets showed something terrifying. No survivors. No escape. No answers. And now, Varric was in command. His officers worked silently, scanning the darkness ahead. Any human ships detected? Varric asked. No, sir, said the sensor officer. Nothing. Total silence. Varric gritted his teeth. Good. Maybe they finally ran out of tricks, but far ahead of the Zorath fleet, deep in the void, the Spectre fleet waited. These were Earth's most secret warships. Stealth, technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, invisible to radar, invisible to sensors, even light bent around them. Inside the lead ship, U.S. Revenant Admiral Sarah Blake stood on the bridge. Her voice was low but steady. Let's begin, she said. Her officers nodded. The human fleet began to move. Silent, deadly, Dudley, unseen, back on the ISS Dominion. Varric watched the star map. Suddenly, a scout ship at the front of the formation disappeared. No signal, an officer said. Probably a mechanical fault, Varric said, trying to stay calm. Then, another ship vanished. Then another. In less than 5 minutes, 8 ships went. Varric's heart pounded. Status of the rear guard. He barked. Silence. Communications with rear command. Silence. Varric's eyes widened. Deploy all long-range sensors. Maximum sweep. Officers rushed to obey. Suddenly, alarms screamed. Hundreds of unknown contacts all around them, moving fast. The human fleet had surrounded them. Shields up. Arm all weapons. Varric shouted, but before any ship could respond, the human fleet struck. Black warships uncloaked just meters from Zorath ships. Point-blank attacks. Torpedoes smashed through armor. Kinetic rounds tore through holes. Human energy beams cut Zorath ships in half in seconds. 20 ships exploded. On the Revenant, Admiral Blake watched the destruction in silence. Don't let them regroup, she said. Keep pressure on all sides. Her fleet obeyed. The Spectre fleet moved like wolves in the dark. Zorath ships tried to fire back, but they were too slow. Their targeting systems failed under heavy jamming. Missiles launched blindly. Lasers fired at empty space. And every time they turned, the humans were already behind them. On board ISS Dominion, Admiral Varric refused to run. His ship shook under multiple impacts. Decks collapsed. Fire spread. Charge the main cannon, he ordered. Weapons offline, an officer shouted. Emergency jump drive. Get us out of here, Varric yelled. Jump systems destroyed. Varric stood, breathing hard. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from the ceiling. His officers lay dead or dying on the view screen. He saw the UES Revenant approach. It floated like a shadow. Weapons glowing. Varric pulled out his personal sidearm. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. He stood in the middle of his burning bridge. The last thing he saw was a bright light from the Revenant's main gun, and then, nothing. The Dominion was vaporized. The rest of the Third Armada fared no better. Ship after ship exploded, crumbled, vanished. Escape pods were hunted down. No distress calls escaped the battlefield. Hours later, Admiral Blake stood in the operations room on the Revenant. All Zorath ships neutralized, her officer reported. No survivors. Blake nodded. Send a single burst transmission to Earth Command, she said. Her voice remained cold. Message reads: Third Armada destroyed. Border remains secure. Her officer tapped the console. The message sent. Blake walked to the window, staring at the field of wreckage floating in space. Another alien fleet. Gone. Another warning delivered. And if the Zorath still didn't listen, Blake knew the next phase would be even worse. Humanity had shown restraint so far, but the patience was running out, and soon, Earth's true wrath would awaken. Space was full of drifting wreckage. Broken ships. Twisted metal, frozen bodies floating like forgotten trash. The Zorath Third Armada was no more. Human ships moved silently through the debris field. The Spectre fleet didn't stop to collect trophies. They didn't take prisoners. They erased and moved on. Inside the UES Revenant, Admiral Blake stood at the command center, eyes fixed on the main screen. Status on enemy communications, she asked. Her comms officer answered. No active signals, no distress calls got through. The jamming net was successful. Blake nodded. But deep inside, she knew it wouldn't end here. The Zorath Empire, they would demand answers. They would want to know what happened to their fleets. And Earth was ready for that too. Far away, in the Zorath Empire, chaos was Spreading. The High War Council stared in horror at the latest reports. Nothing. No ships returning. No survivors. No messages. Only static, silence, and fear. Then small data fragments began arriving. Pieces of old ship logs recovered from escape pods, ejected seconds before total destruction. The first video clip played inside the War Council chamber. A Zorath officer, bleeding, face pale, whispered into the camera, "They don't talk, they don't negotiate, they just kill." And then vanish. The screen cut to black. The next file played. A panicked engineer screamed into his console, "They're everywhere. We shoot, they're already behind us. We run, they're already ahead. It's like they know our every move." Then an explosion ended the recording. Another clip showed ship sensors glitching, weapons firing into empty space, and then the face of a human soldier appearing on the screen, cold eyes staring, before the feed went dark. On the Zorath homeworld, fear spread fast. Soldiers refused to board ships heading for the human border. Families of the dead protested on the streets. News channels across the Empire played the broken footage again and again. A new name started spreading among Zorath civilians: the Silent Death, a phrase whispered by survivors from older wars. Now revived. In the War Council, Supreme Warlord Krelix slammed his fist on the table. "We will not bow to fear," he roared. "We will send the 4th Armada with double reinforcement, total planetary invasion force." But this time, none of his generals responded quickly. Some looked away. Some shifted nervously. Finally, one brave general stood. "My lord, if I may speak freely, we should consider negotiation." Krelix turned toward him, rage building in his eyes. "You suggest we bow to these humans?" The general stayed calm. "My lord, 3 entire fleets, over 300 ships, are gone. Without explanation, without survivors. We don't even know how they're doing it." Another counselor added, "And what if they're listening, even now?" A heavy silence filled the room. Krelix's face twisted with anger. "Let them listen," he shouted. "We will show them Zorath's strength, begin full war mobilization." But deep inside, even Krelix felt doubt. Back near Earth, Admiral Blake sat with her most trusted advisors. Her intelligence officer, Commander Grant, gave the latest update. "Ma'am, Zorath, citizens are panicking. Military recruitment is dropping. There's talk of protests spreading on multiple colonies." Blake nodded. Double quotes, "Good. Fear works better than bullets." Grant smiled slightly. "But ma'am, there's something else." Blake turned. "What?" "We intercepted a secret transmission from inside the Zorath High Command," Grant said. "Audio only, but you'll want to hear this." He pressed play. Krelix's voice echoed through the speakers. "Let the humans come. We will burn their worlds, crush their fleets. The Zorath Empire does not fear ghosts." Blake's smile disappeared. "So they still don't understand," she said. She stood slowly. "Fine. If fear isn't enough, let's give them something worse." Her officers stared at her. Blake's voice dropped low. "Prepare Operation Nightfall." Hours later, small human strike teams began moving deep into Zorath space. Stealth ships, electronic warfare units, void hunter squads. They targeted key communication satellites. They jammed military relays. They hacked government systems. Soon, across the Zorath Empire, strange things started happening. Military bases found their power grids shutting down. Defense systems fired on friendly ships. Supply convoys vanished. Even civilian news broadcasts started glitching. For a brief few seconds, every Zorath screen lit up with one chilling message: "You were warned." And then, silence. On Zorath Prime, citizens screamed in the streets. Some believed the humans were already on the planet. Some soldiers refused orders, fearing invisible human infiltrators. Inside the War Council chamber, Supreme Warlord Krelix stood frozen. On his private console, a single video played. A field of wreckage, dead Zorath ships floating in space. Then, Admiral Blake's face appeared, calm, cold, unforgiving. Her words were simple: "Next time, we won't stop at your borders." The screen went black. And for the first time in decades, Krelix felt something new. Not anger, not pride, but fear. Real, deep, cold fear. Zorath Prime, the heart of the Zorath Empire, was no longer the proud, fearless place it used to be. In the streets, civilians walked nervously, looking up at the sky as if human ships could appear at any moment. Military recruitment centers stood empty. Zorath soldiers whispered to each other behind closed doors. Inside the High War Council chamber, Supreme Warlord Krelix sat at the head of the table, staring at a large screen. It showed the map of space for years, the border between Zorath and human space was thin, just a small line marked with warning buoys. But now, the red-shaded area, the Forbidden Zone, was growing. The new line stretched deep into what used to be Zorath-controlled sectors. Krelik slammed his fist on the table. They can't do this. That's our space, he roared. A communications officer stepped forward nervously. My lord, the humans have deployed new satellite defense grids, automated weapons platforms, cloaked minefields, and long-range jamming beacons. Another general added quietly, any ship entering the zone vanishes. No signals, no survivors. Krelik's eyes burned with rage. We will send stealth scouts, gather intelligence, learn their tactics, but deep down, he wondered, how many more lives would be lost? Thousands of kilometers away, on the edge of the growing Forbidden Zone, a small Zorath scout ship crept forward. The ship's crew sat tense at their stations. Keep all emissions low, the captain whispered. Silent running, no signals. The ship floated carefully through the darkness. For a few minutes, everything stayed quiet. No alarms, no enemy contacts. The crew began to relax, but then their main screen blinked. A single word appeared. Detected. Before the captain could speak, the ship exploded. A hidden mine had triggered, completely destroying them. No time to send a message, no time to warn others, just instant death. Eth Defense Command. Admiral Blake reviewed the satellite feed. Another scout ship eliminated, her officer reported. Blake nodded slowly. Keep the perimeter expanding at 10 kilometers per day, she said. Her advisors stared at her. Ma'am, at this rate, we'll take full control of 3 Zorath sectors within weeks. One said. Blake turned her cold gaze toward him. Exactly, she said. We warned them now. We take. Her strategy was simple. No grand invasions, no flashy battles, just slow, silent, creeping expansion. And if the Zorath tried to stop it, they vanished. Across the galaxy, rumors began to spread. Other alien empires watched nervously. Old allies of the Zorath started backing away. No one wanted to get involved. The legend of human death space grew with each passing day. Some alien traders even began changing their maps. They labeled the area simply, no entry, death zone. Meanwhile, deep inside Zorath space, panic turned to anger. Propaganda broadcasts screamed about human aggression. Zorath leaders promised retaliation, but when small task forces tried to reclaim lost sectors, they never returned. It was like fighting shadows fighting ghosts. The fear became worse than the actual attacks. Soldiers refused to enter human space. Entire squadrons deserted. In Zoroth schools, children were told bedtime stories about the night. Soldiers, human warriors who appeared from nowhere. Parents warned their kids, be good, or the humans will come for you. On the front lines, more human defense satellites appeared. Cloaked automated gunships patrolled the edges. Void hunters deployed deep inside enemy territory, cutting off Zorath supply lines, sabotaging their logistics. Within weeks, 3 more Zorath sectors fell into silence. No communications. No trade. No life. Inside her command bunker on Earth, Admiral Blake watched the progress reports. Her aide approached. Ma'am, Zorath fleet movements have stopped. They're pulling back from all border regions. Blake nodded. Good. Keep pressure on their supply routes. The aide hesitated. Ma'am, when do we stop? How far do we push? Blake's face remained expressionless. She tapped her console. A large map appeared. The shaded red Forbidden Zone now stretched almost halfway into Zoroth territory. Her voice was cold and final. We stop when they beg. On Zoroth Prime, Supreme Warlord Krelik sat alone in his chambers. The latest casualty list sat, unread, on his desk. For the first time in his life, he truly wondered, had they awakened something they could never stop? His hands shook, because the truth was clear now. The humans were not fighting for defense anymore. They were expanding, taking, dominating, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing, the Zorath Empire could do to stop them. Not anymore. Supreme Warlord Krelik sat alone in his war chamber, staring at the massive screen in front of him. A giant map of Zorath space glowed softly in the dark room. Red zones, forbidden zones, human-controlled sectors. They covered nearly half of the Empire now. Every day, the human line pushed forward, and every day the Zorath forces fell back or disappeared. Krelik's once proud military was broken. Fleets gone. Outposts silent. Colonies abandoned. And worst of all, no response from the humans. No message. No negotiation. Only slow, cold death outside the palace. Protests raged. Zorath civilians screamed for answers. Families of lost soldiers demanded to know the truth. Some called Krelix a coward, others called him a murderer for the first time in history. The people of Zorath Prime doubted their leader, his generals feared him less and less, some even whispered rumors of revolt, but he had one last plan, one last desperate move. Inside a secret underground bunker, Krelix gathered his top scientists. "We will send a peace offer," he said. His council looked shocked. "My lord." "Surrender," one whispered. Krelix's eyes burned with rage. "No," he snapped. "Not surrender, just negotiations, a chance to buy time." Another general asked carefully, "Do you think the humans will accept?" Krelix stood slowly. "I don't care," he said coldly. "But if we don't act now, there will be no empire left to save." He turned to his communication director. "Prepare a message to Earth." Meanwhile, deep inside the UES Revenant, Admiral Blake stood by the observation window, watching the endless stars. Commander Grant approached. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from Zorath High Command." Blake raised an eyebrow. "Put it through," she said. The message played. Krelix's face appeared on the screen, tired, worn, but still full of false pride. "To the leaders of Earth," Krelix began, his voice low and shaky, "we wish to discuss peace. We are ready to negotiate terms for a ceasefire." Blake watched silently, arms crossed. Krelix continued, "We understand the strength of humanity, and we seek peaceful resolution before more lives are lost." The message ended. Silence filled the room. Her officers waited for her response. Blake smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Her voice was quiet and cold. "Prepare the fleet for final phase operations." Within hours, orders spread across the Spectre fleet and Void Hunter teams. No reply was sent to KRELIX. No message. No warning. Just action. Human ships moved faster than ever before. Zorath outposts vanished overnight. Colonies went dark. Communication hubs collapsed under sabotage attacks. Zorath commanders, hoping for a reply, received only explosions. Every time a new Zorath fleet assembled, they were destroyed before they could launch. Human infiltration teams even reached deep into Zorath Prime's orbit, jamming long-range defenses. In the Zorath Palace, Krelix waited for a reply that never came. Every hour he asked, "Any response?" His staff shook their heads. "None, my lord." Finally Krelix stood, shaking with rage. "Fools, they ignore us like we're insects. We must retaliate." One brave general stepped forward. "My lord, with what ships, with what soldiers? We have nothing left." Krelix grabbed the general by the throat, roaring in fury. But as he did, alarms began to sound. Sirens screamed across the city. An officer ran inside, unknown contacts entering. "Zorath Prime space." Krelix froze. "Humans," he whispered. The officer nodded. "Massive fleet, already in orbit, weapons hot." Krelix stumbled back, his final line of defense broken. His capital planet now surrounded. There were no more fleets to call. No more armies to deploy, no more hope. In orbit, Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of her flagship. The UES Revenant hovered at the front of the fleet around her. Hundreds of human ships floated, like silent predators. "Status?" she asked. "All Zorath defense platforms disabled," her officer said. "Orbital control. Ours." Blake nodded. She opened a channel to all fleet commanders. "Begin planetary lockdown. Void Hunters deployed. Orbital bombardment weapons charged. Jamming fields cut off all outgoing signals." For the first time in history, an alien empire's capital was under total human control. "Final Zorath Prime is ours." The officer hesitated. "No surrender message from them, ma'am." Blake shook her head. "We didn't come here for surrender," she said. "We came for silence." On the surface, as human ships descended toward the planet, Supreme Warlord Krelix sat on his throne, staring at the floor. The final alarms rang through the palace. Shadows moved outside his chamber. Footsteps. Human boots. And then darkness. Zorath Prime, once the heart of a mighty empire, now lay quiet under a blanket of smoke and dust. Human ships floated above the planet, their black holes shining against the pale light of the local star. The streets below, empty. Zorath soldiers had either fled, surrendered in small pockets, or simply vanished. The civilians, what few remained, stayed locked in their homes, too afraid to step outside. There were no human soldiers parading through the streets, no flags raised, no speeches, only silence. And that made it worse. Inside the former Zorath High Command bunker, Admiral Sarah Blake stood with her officers. Her cold gaze moved across the massive holographic map of the Zorath Empire. Red zones now covered almost everything, entire star systems. colonies, mining world, all marked as under human control or neutralized. Her intelligence officer, Commander Grant, approached Ma'am. Latest status update, he said quietly. Blake nodded. Double quotes, go on. Grant continued. Zoroth communication, networks, offline, long-range transmissions, jammed, supply chains, broken, leadership structure, gone. Blake stared at the blinking red indicators. And their people, she asked. Grant hesitated. Scattered, starving, disorganized. Civilians are too scared to resist. Some worlds are already evacuating on their own. Blake gave a small, bitter smile. So, it's over, she said softly. Back on Earth, at Defense Command. High-ranking officials gathered around a large conference table. A giant screen showed live feeds from Zoroth Prime and multiple fallen sectors. The room remained silent as they watched. Then, a voice crackled over the speakers. Admiral Blake's transmission. Mission complete, she said calmly. Zoroth Empire is no longer a threat. Total strategic dominance achieved. The Earth leaders sat still. One finally spoke. And the Zoroth leadership, Blake answered without hesitation. Neutralized on Zoroth Prime. In the ruins of the once Great War Council chamber, Supreme Warlord Krelix's throne sat empty. His fate, never officially reported. Some whispered he died during the final orbital strikes. Others said human void hunters captured him and erased him quietly. The truth, no one knew, and that mystery added to the fear. Across the galaxy, alien empires watched carefully. They held emergency meetings. They rewrote border maps. Some governments sent private messages to Earth, begging for peace, promising they would never cross human space. Humanity didn't reply. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything in deep space. Human ships patrolled the new borders. The forbidden zone now stretched so far. It touched the edge of other alien territories. No ship, not even civilian transports, dared come near. Galactic traders renamed the area on their star charts. Death Zone, human territory. Space traffic routes shifted. Trade routes bent around it. And the stories continued to spread. Children on distant planets heard tales of the Ghost Fleet. Miners on asteroid belts told each other about the silent hunters. Merchant captains warned new crew members never cross the human line, because everyone now knew when humans gave a warning, they meant it. Back on Earth, Admiral Blake stood outside Defense Command headquarters, staring up at the night sky. Her second-in-command walked up beside her. It's done, he said softly. Blake nodded. For now. Her officer frowned. You think the Zoroth will try again? Blake shook her head. No, not them. She paused. But someone else. Someday, somewhere, we'll forget. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at the stars. And when they do, we'll remind them, far across the galaxy, in the deep void. Human ships kept moving. Cloaked, watching. Waiting, because humanity had learned something from history. In the end, it wasn't about defense. It wasn't about war. It was about making sure no one ever dared again. And so, the galaxy stayed quiet, because silence was the only thing the humans left behind.